This is Michael Dawes, Director of Public Relations, and you're tuned in to Cougar Paws on KBGB 1590 AM. Today we're talking with Darnell Holopirek. She's Executive Director of Institutional Advancement at Barton Community College. We're talking about educational tax credits, and we'll also touch on some other aspects of institutional advancement, also known as foundation, to listeners who might know it more as that. Good morning, Darnell.
Well, good morning, Mike.
So listeners may have heard about educational tax credits. I know you have some commercials on the radio, but let's explain that in detail. What does it mean that Barton is offering educational tax credits?
Well, Mike, first of all, this is a little bit unusual for educational institutions to be able to have tax credits to offer their donors. It's not unusual to people that have used them in the past. Many medical facilities use them. Other community foundations have had these tax credits. But for the educational side of things, this is truly new. Here, a couple years ago, the state was looking at all the state universities, and they were trying to see how they could help them out with some of the infrastructure on their campuses. I mean, like everything else, no matter how good you take care of things, things wear out. And so they decided that they were going to actually give cash to like K-State, KU, Fort Hays State, Wichita State. And they didn't know how they were going to be able to help all the 19 community colleges. So the Board of Regents and the Kansas Legislative session, they decided that they were going to authorize not only Barton Community College, but also the other 18 community colleges, an opportunity to offer tax credits. And they were going to do this for a 5-year period. And we're on our 3rd year now. And so originally, the first year they offered 60% tax credits, and last year and this year it's been 54%. So to people that have a Kansas state tax liability, this is something that everybody wants to look at. Well, on behalf of the educational institutions, we're saying if you're going to have a tax liability and you're going to have to write that check anyway, please consider us and look at the opportunity we have that the Barton County residents or the communities around here. It's statewide. I've had people donate from Johnson County in the past year or two, but it's an opportunity that they can donate to the college and receive a tax credit, and that way they are helping us as they're helping themselves. So it's a really good opportunity.
And essentially, instead of that money going to the government, it stays in our location and allows us to utilize it to move this college along and therefore help the community.
I'm really glad you said that. Yes, that is true. Instead of paying your taxes and it going to the state, it is more local and it's going to help Barton Community College.
So Barton's in year 3 of offering this credit, and I know the first year we had a lot of participation. Obviously, the economy was starting to dip, but not in this area as much, so we benefited from that. And then last year, obviously, the economy was in full tilt going downward, so this year is kind of a mix. What's participation like? Has participation been like so far?
Well, first of all, the first year, the state allowed us $56,000, and we did place those tax credits. So we sold those tax credits, which worked. Last year, they had a little over $78,000, and I just didn't have much luck. I had a few people take advantage of it, but mainly it was because of the economy. People didn't know where they stood on their taxes. They didn't know what was going to be happening. The economy was going sour, and you have to understand that we're really an ag-based community, a region, and many of them had lost a lot of money, and so they didn't need the tax write-off or the tax credit. And this year and hopefully in the next couple years, we actually are able to place or sell $208,233. I started out in March sending letters to accountants and attorneys and tax preparers, and I also, anyone that has purchased these tax credits in the past 2 years, I wrote them a letter and said, well, we are going to be able to offer them again. It's with the economy, it's a year-by-year thing too, even though they've committed for 5 years. And so anyway, I wrote letters and I've talked to different people, but it's been the last month that everybody's starting to take interest. And the reason for that is we do have a lot of people that do forward planning on their taxes, and even though you're paying taxes for 2010, many people really know where they're going to be standing tax liability wise, and they're going to see their accountants now or their attorneys or tax preparers. And so, but the funds have to be to my office and approved before December 31st. Well, of course, with the college being closed over the holiday, I'm looking at that weekend of, or week after.
So the week of December 13th.
Yes, there you go. I didn't know the date. I don't have a calendar in front of me. But yes, so we want to make it as easy as possible, but the state does have to approve it, and they have to send the paperwork back so the folks have the right official paperwork that they need for their accountant.
Now, one thing you mentioned to me that I think is very key for individuals, especially if they didn't have a liability last year and may not know whether they're going to have a liability this year, if they think they may have a liability, they can still go through with this process. And if they actually get a refund or what have you and have no liability, it still doesn't cost them anything. Even though they have to write that check, that'll all come back to them if they do not qualify for these tax credits.
First of all, I would recommend to anyone, whether they have a small liability for the state of Kansas or a large one, they need to look over their own situation. I can't say, hey, this is what's going to happen, or I can't promise them anything. So we always tell people, make sure you talk to your accountant or your tax preparer first. So that is the most important thing, and then I'll be happy to explain more in detail. But that is the requirement, is for them to really look and see what they're going to owe in the year of 2010.
Darnell, you hit upon the fact that tax preparers can pretty much determine whether somebody is going to have a liability or not, but we don't want to dissuade those individuals that may not at this point know. So how do they go about it if they're kind of on the fence, think it's too much work, what have you, but they know they may have a liability? You still want them to pursue, right?
Oh, definitely. Mike, it isn't hard to pick up the phone and make one phone call, and that's to me. If they know that they had a tax liability last year and they don't see that their situation is changing much, they're probably going to have close to what they had last year. But what they need to do is pick up the phone and call me. They have about 4 or 5 quick questions to ask, and then I do the rest of the work for them. Even though these tax credits are to help the college, the foundation office, the institutional advancement office, manages all the paperwork, all the records. I have to send in quarterly reports, whatever. The state then will actually come back and say if this individual is approved or not, and then I get the right paperwork to them. So first of all, I'd say it's not hard. It's very, very easy. Take a few minutes to think about what your tax liability is going to be for the state of Kansas for 2010. Pick up the phone and call me. I'll tell you what I need to know, and then we'll go forward. But one thing I do have to share, the state is requiring them to send in their tax return electronically. So if they have not done that in the past and they do not want to do it this year, then I can't help them out. And it's not because I don't want to, it's because the state requires that they send in an electronic tax return. So that is one stipulation that has to be adhered to, you know. But anyway, they call me, we talk about it a little bit, I can share with them what I know, and it would probably take 5 or 10 minutes of their time. If they elect to do that, then before I can process my paperwork, I do have to have a check. So if, for example, they have about a $600 tax liability, they would send me a check for about $1,050, whatever. I send it in. They have that tax credit once it's approved, and you take it to your accountant or to whoever you have do your taxes. Or if you're one of those fortunate people that can do your own tax work, you can do that on TurboTax too. So anyway, it isn't hard. And I guess I try to tell people, yes, maybe people that have had more of a tax liability always looks into this. But as I've told our campus folks, it doesn't make any difference if it's big or small. If this is going to be an advantage to you and you can help the college, that's what you want to do.
So in that scenario, you mentioned $600,
yes,
and then $1,050. How does that work then?
Okay.
I mean,
they would write me a check for about $1,100, okay, and then they they would be able to use that as a donation. So I don't want to get into too many of the technical details because, again, their accountant can tell them, but that would be like a donation. So on their federal side, it would be a donation, and it may, it depends on what tax bracket they're in, but it could lower their adjusted gross income. That adjusted gross income is then turned over into the Kansas state tax, and then once your state tax is figured, then they take the full tax credit off. So then they'd end up taking the $600 off the bottom. So if you owed $300 taxes, well, you would get the difference. They would write you a check, the state would, for the difference. Now, Mike, that is something different about these tax credits. Not all tax credits are like that, and they'll say, okay, we're going to roll it over till the next year. These, if you've overpaid, and you have money coming back to you, you will actually get a check, and you don't have to show it as an income the following year. So, I mean, it sounds complicated, but it's not near as complicated as I may be making it, and I don't intend to do that.
I know you mentioned that we have credits at 54%. 54% of what?
Okay, of whatever they donate. So whatever amount those individuals need for the tax credit, then they figure out how much they have to donate to get that amount of a tax credit. So it's 54% of whatever they write their check for. Now, in some situations, people can even almost make money by this. It depends on their own tax bracket and you know, all of these other little details that is truly individual. But I have accountants that take advantage of this. I have attorneys that take advantage of this. And so if they see the value, then I want to be able to offer this opportunity to any one of us, whether we have a large tax liability or not.
Now, Barton can only use the tax credit money for infrastructure improvement projects. So what has Barton done with the money in the past, and what about our plans for the money that's going to be coming in for 2010?
Okay, again, let me kind of share with you. This was they call this the Deferred Maintenance Project. Now, that's what the state's calling it, and it can only be used by the college within the definition of a repair, reconstruction, remodeling, rehabilitation of a building located on our college campus. No athletic facility can be included according to the state regulations. So what we do is once we get the funds, everything's approved, then the institutional advancement writes a check to the college. They have to have a special account, and they can use it for roof repair. They can use it for, like we've just redone our nursing program, they can use it to do that. Anything that you would think would help the college, other than you can't build new buildings, you can't do any of that. But there are so many things that are just upkeep that no different than any other businesses. You just have to keep repairing or things keep breaking down. And that's what the state intended this to do, is to give the donor an opportunity to be able to donate and get benefit from it at the same time and still help the college do maintenance work.
Talking about tax credits, and she mentioned that this year is the big year. We've got $208,233 of tax credits available. And what I want to emphasize here, Darnell, is last year we didn't hit our mark, and that was far less money available. This year is the big year. We want to encourage those individuals, no matter how big or small their tax liability may be, to inquire, because every little bit's going to matter as far as us being able to take advantage of that $208,000 and $208,233. What can you tell people who might be on the fence thinking my amount's not going to make that big a difference?
It does make a difference, whether it's tax credits or other donations to the college. I've always told my donors, you don't have to be a big donor. You don't have to be a big tax credit buyer to help the college. And the thing of it is, Mike, it's not just Barton that didn't sell all their tax credits last year. I think there were only 2 community colleges in the state that sold all of theirs. And so I think that we need to really look and say, this is an opportunity to help the college and we're helping the citizens in this area, and so they really do need to look at it. So if it's a tax liability and you donate $500, or if you donate $300, anything is better than nothing, and we are really, really tickled about it.
That concludes this edition of Cougar Paws. This is your host, Michael Dawes, saying so long.